Hello and welcome to Rehab Reels, Conversations on Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, hosted by Dr. Gwen Soa. Our first of two guest presenters this evening, Dr. Ryan Nuzbaum, is an assistant professor in the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine and serves as assistant program director for the UPMC Sports Medicine Fellowship. Dr. Nuzbaum's clinical interests include sports-related and musculoskeletal injuries for people of all ages, athletes with disabilities, diagnostic ultrasound, advanced interventional ultrasound procedures, orthobiologics, electrodiagnostic medicine, and nerve injuries. Dr. Nuzbaum's research interests include musculoskeletal ultrasound medical education, injury surveillance and prevention, and equity for athletes with disabilities. Our second presenter is Paralympian gold medalist Dan Mccoy. Dan is a clinical research coordinator at the Human Engineering Research Laboratories and supports patient care at the UPMC Adult Spina Bifida Clinic and the UPMC Center for Assistive Technology. Dan played for 10 years as a member of the USA men's national sled hockey team and won 2 world championship gold medals, as well as a gold medal in the 2014 Paralympic Games in Sochi, Russia. He is currently a senior team member and director of player development for the Mighty Penguins sled hockey team and holds a personal trainer certification from the American Council on Exercise, helping individuals with disabilities learn how to take care of their health and wellness through adaptive sports and exercise. Dr. Soa, Ryan, and Dan, thank you so much for being with us today. Dr. Soa, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Andy. And this is a real treat, I think, to be with all of you this evening. And thanks so much for those of you who have joined us again and anyone who's new to our evening sessions. This is really an exciting topic that we're going to discuss tonight. As you heard, Dr. Nuzbaum is faculty within our department. He did his bachelor's degree at the University of Arizona and medical school at LECOM, just north of here, so knows the area well. And it's great that after doing his residency at Chicago, he chose his fellowship to be here at the UPMC Sports Medicine Fellowship Program. And we couldn't have been more proud of that, but even more excited that we were fortunate enough and we were smart enough to get him to decide to stay on with us as faculty, where he's now leading a lot of the programs that you heard about. In addition to his clinical excellence as a physician, he's also a master educator. And so he brings with him a wonderful skill set in terms of inspiring our next generation of clinicians that will be caring for the populations that we serve. As you'll hear about tonight, and I won't steal his thunder, he really does walk the walk and talk the talk about exercise as medicine and how important that is to everyone's health and well-being. And so it'll be really exciting to hear from him. Dan Mccoy, as you heard, is also an amazingly accomplished person in his own right. And he's also a Pittsburgh native. So he is from Cheswick, PA, originally went to Fox Chapel, and then here the University of Pittsburgh for his degree work. I won't steal his thunder. You'll hear all about his amazing accomplishments as an athlete, but also the work that he's done in addition to that as a personal trainer and an advocate and an educator for helping people to understand the importance of health through exercise and such an incredible impact that can have, and how everyone really can be active with the right guidance and the right encouragement and the right resources. So I think as we think about, this is such an important time, I think, in our society to be thinking about inclusion of all types. And I think you're going to hear a lot about how, with some relatively simple ideas, encouragement, and nudges, if you will, that we can keep everyone active and thriving in a way that really can help not only their physical health, but also their well-being. So I will turn it over to Ryan and Dan to share their thoughts with you. And then what I'll really look forward to is encouraging all of your participation in some discussion at the end of the presentation this evening.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Soa. Thanks, Andy, for the great introduction. And, I think we're really lucky to live in Pittsburgh. I think we have a thriving adaptive sports community. And I think our department has a great tradition of contributing and collaborating in this space. So I wanted to share some of the initiatives we've been doing recently, kind of cover some adaptive sports grassroots initiatives and the USA Disabled Hockey Festival, which we were fortunate enough to cover this past year. So first, I wanted to share a story. This is a friend of mine and Dan Mccoy's, named Alex Brown. He's here on the right, and it's his family here on the left. His sister Abby, dad Eric, and mother Amy. And Alex, at a young age, about age 4, had a spontaneous epidural hematoma from a high cervical region to really mid-level thoracic region. And that essentially resulted in a spinal cord injury and a life-changing event for him and his family. After a 202-day hospital admission course from this and very challenging medical course, he survived and was discharged. And I think that really speaks to Alex's resiliency and really his family's resiliency. And from this circumstance, they've really done nothing but great things in our community. And what I mean by that is, of course, Alex is an impactful student athlete at North Catholic, but as a family, they've started not-for-profits like Rise Again, and a not-for-profit focused on helping individuals who have had spinal cord injuries and really giving them cutting-edge resources and helping them attain that through maybe some funding or just some direction. And then Amy was a president of Mighty Penguins, which is one of the premier sled hockey groups in the United States. And Eric was a coach for many years and may still be. And so really their impact has been outstanding in our community. And they continue to make an impact. Alex is the only track and field athlete using a wheelchair at his local high school. He's now a junior, but last year they filed a lawsuit against the Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association, really looking for equal opportunity. And Alex does, he of course does the 100-meter. He also does throwing events as well, like the shot put. And the PIA said, essentially the rules were read or interpreted as such that he could not participate at the state championship. And so they sued for this because Alex wants to compete for his school. And this is still an ongoing lawsuit. And we're hoping for a great outcome for this. So far, Alex last year was granted an accommodation where potentially he could, if he qualified for a state championship, he could then go to the state championship. So I think it is some progress, but I do think this is a still ongoing circumstance. So Alex and Brown family, really setting a trail for more opportunity in sport. And so really hearing Alex's story, I really thought, where else is this happening and how often is this inequity occurring? This is Tatiana Mcfadden. She's one of the most decorated track and field Paralympians that we have in our country and really the world. And in high school, she was not initially allowed to participate on her track and field team. And through a lawsuit that ultimately ended up in something called Tatiana's Law, where student athletes in Maryland can participate in track and field in various sports and not have that discrimination against them. And I think there was a recognition of this law by President Obama, and this has been translated nationally, which is a big win. So really with that question we saw on the last slide, a group of us wanted to review the United States High School State Athletic Association websites. We thought it might be a reasonable way of capturing this question of what is the size of this inequity. And Dr. Allison Schrader was the principal investigator for this. Sam Schroth is a candidate for MD PhD out of Northwestern. And she utilizes a wheelchair in her day-to-day activity and is an endurance athlete who just competed and completed the Chicago Marathon. So, and then Dr. Yesatwakli Wasarnu in our department does outstanding work in the adaptive sport realm. And Dr. Kentaro Onishi is another impactful sports medicine physician in our department. So our questions were, what is the presence of organized sport for athletes with disabilities? and how many of the state athletic constitutions have inclusive language about student athletes with disabilities. And so what we saw, this is a brief summary. We looked at two categories, one unified sport, that comes from the Special Olympics organization, where they pair individuals with intellectual disabilities to individuals without intellectual disabilities, and they compete in different sporting events. And it's a very effective model. And then parasport follows the similar approach that you see in the Paralympics, where there's more than just cognitive disabilities that are seen, but like, for instance, you might see a spinal cord injury related, or you may see amputee. It's a broader categorization. Unified sport, we identified as being in 43% of these websites in each of these states. So about 22 states. The one, in addition to 50, is DC, Washington, DC. Parasport, we saw in 37% of states, about 19 of those. So in blue is parasport, in purple is unified sport, and both is the color black. So then when we look at what are the common sports, track and field was certainly the most common there on the left for parasport, with 16 states mentioning that on their webpage. And specifically wheelchair shot put and wheelchair 100 meter, interestingly, the two that Alex Brown does, we saw that 16 and 15 states offered that. And in their championship data about the outcomes of who won, 14 of those states and 13 of those states respectively were reporting on the champions at that time, which I think is showing that many states are already doing this very well. And for wheelchair shot put, there was about 4.6 athletes participating per state. And in the wheelchair 100 meter, it's about 4.3. If you look at a state like Washington, they actually had numbers up to around 10 or 11. And so I just wonder, with accessibility and knowing about this, if we could get those numbers up higher. For unified sport, track and field was the most common at 16, and then subsequently after, basketball and soccer had a decent representation. Now, granted, all this data is found on the web pages of those state athletic associations. So I think that's key to note, because we could very well miss some things that may be on different websites that weren't captured for what state opportunities there are. So for this constitutional review, we looked for non-discriminatory statements in each state athletic association constitution. And 45%, or 23 of those states, had a non-discriminatory statement towards athletes with disabilities. And for accommodation statements, it was 35%, or 18 of 51 states. And so accommodation statements are colored in blue in the map below. Non-discrimination statements, states who had that, were colored purple. And then both statements would be with the states that are colored black. So, this data to me shows that we have a lot of room for improvement, both, in these categories that we looked at. And so I thought this was an example of a really good website. California, if you can look at the white bar there, they have sports as well as inclusive sports in their listings of selection. And I think that's really probably a great standard that many other states could look at as they describe what is inclusive sport, what is unified sport, para-athlete sport. I thought it was really well done. And so next step for this, we want to use this data for improving equity in high school sports, and really hopefully changing the constitutions. And so we're working on how to do that effectively, hand in hand with people like Alex Brown and the Brown family, who are doing it through ways of sometimes litigation. And so we presented some of this already at the American College of Sports Medicine in poster format, and hoping to publish it. I just wanted to show this briefly. The National Federation of High School State High School Associations, they publish census data on a yearly basis. So if you look at the bottom bar, which is 2011, adaptive sports was roughly nearly 6,000, and it's grown in a decade to almost 8,000. Conversely, or similarly, unified sports really wasn't even listed a decade ago, and now there's nearly 50,000 participants. So I think this is capturing that there is growth and interest And we hope to contribute to these numbers, continual growth. And then this is more of a sampler, but what that says under there is, what about the Division I college websites? And Dr. Connor Foltz is a resident in our residency program. And along with some familiar faces here, and Margot Malone, who's an incoming medical student, not sure where she'll be enrolling, but I know somewhere. We looked at what this looks like at the Division I college level. And I think one important finding we've seen so far is that 20% of colleges had parasport opportunities, with the most common being recreational activity. So a lot of improvement there as well for talking about really access and opportunity at these college levels. We looked at the regular web page for the college. We looked at their athletic web page, and then we looked at their rec web page. So definitely check out Connor's poster at the upcoming AAPMR. And so lastly, wanted to cover the Disabled Hockey Festival, which was in Pittsburgh this year. And, Dan was participating in this. So, really great event. And so 185 games in 4 different venues. And people were coming from all over the country to participate in this. We had 14 residents and fellows cover the event, along with athletic trainers from UPMC. And really a quick and important shout out to Dr. Chris Standard and Dr. Allison Schrader, who were medical directors for this event, along with myself, and really provided great leadership for this. So I think without them, I'm not so sure it would have been a lot more challenging to pull off. So thank you for their commitment to this. And USA Hockey, I think, is at the cutting edge of inclusive athletics. They have 6 different divisions for which they had events for this festival. And as you can see here, I mean, blind hockey, deaf hockey, these are some divisions that may not be seen by some people on this call before. And I thought it was really well done. This is a sled hockey event of one of our local Penguin teams. Yeah, so, I mean, there was roughly 150 games of action like that. And these teams really want to win. So it was really enjoyable to contribute to. And so we actually did some injury monitoring for this. And Dr. Michelle Aventov is a resident in our department. And she's been leading kind of putting this all together, this for possible manuscript. And Corey Ratch is a great athletic trainer who was covering this event. And of course, Dr. Schrader has been helpful with this. Dr. Crandall and Dr. Uline are from different, Dr. Crandall's from Spalding in Boston, and Dr. Uline's from up in Wisconsin. And they're both with USA Hockey in the sled hockey and parasport realm. And they've been helpful for putting this together. So we saw 61 total injuries evaluated, mostly upper body, but you can see there's a wider range there. And what we saw, Warrior division is mostly played. There's no sleds with that division. They're on their feet. And we saw some interesting contrast there compared to adult sled. The Warrior division more often had lower body, adult sled had upper body, and lacerations for Warrior were more often in the face. And it's probably because they don't wear any mask, versus adult sled was on the thighs or arms. And I thought that was interesting to point out. And so more injuries were seen in adult over youth. Lacerations were the most common reason for referral, and concussion was the most common reason for no return to play. And this is the first time this event has been monitored like this. And we were actually able to submit a report to USA Hockey. They talked about the findings at the Safety and Protective Committee meeting, and they're implementing a half visor recommendation for the Warrior division. So I think, we did our diligence in showing them where we could prevent injuries. So that's it. Thanks a lot. And this is Alex. We were hanging out at the event. And I think, now it's time to listen to the Paralympian, right? Probably much more interesting.
My name is Dan Mccoy, Paralympic gold medalist, 2-time world champion in sled hockey, as well in Norway and Buffalo, actually, and a certified personal trainer. So just here to talk a little bit about my Paralympic experience, but also my experience in just adaptive sports and training throughout most of my life. So my background, was born with spina bifida, myelomeningocele, L3-4, so lumbar, third and fourth vertebrae area. And for those of you, if you're not familiar with that, myelomeningocele spina bifida is technically the most severe form of spina bifida, meaning there was just a hole in my back when I was born. My spine wasn't fully formed. It was actually external in a bubble of some sort. And obviously, I'm not a medical doctor, so the terminology, I just kind of make things up. And I'm an athlete, so quite a interesting vocabulary. But along with spina bifida, myelomeningocele, I also have hydrocephalus, which is just a fancy term for excess fluid on the brain. So I have a shunt. It's actually a vein-looking thing here right in my neck. And with all of these, I've had about 4 shunt revisions before the age of 8 months of age. And the day I was born, I actually had a spinal closure and my shunt was inserted. So along with these surgeries, I've had club feet repair, a few minor surgeries before I was a year old. And then when I was about 6 years old, and as well as in 5th grade, I had club foot surgery. I had screws put on my ankles, as well as maybe around a dozen shunt failures when I was 6 years old. So needless to say, I'm not a big fan of needles and IVs and things. Won't be getting a tattoo anytime soon. But through all of this, I recognize the need for individuals with disabilities to kind of learn what their body can do and use their disabilities as really strengths to get the most out of life. So. Okay, so growing up, I really played every sport I could. Non-adaptive sports, I played karate. I did karate with crutches, with loft-strand crutches. I grew up using hip knee orthoses, so HKAFOs, and now I use KAFOs, knee, ankle, foot orthoses, and just regular ankle, foot orthoses. So karate, t-ball, flag football, basketball, lacrosse. I was actually a goalie in lacrosse, and I couldn't run around. Still can't run around more than a couple feet without falling over. And it's not really a run; it's more of a waddle. So thankfully, I live in Pittsburgh, where the Penguins are the NHL team. So I always say I'm an honorary Penguin, just in human form. But needless to say, penguins are my favorite animal. Anyway. Adaptive sports, I've played sled hockey, obviously. That's kind of the main sport. Wheelchair basketball, hand cycling. I've tried, I've watched quad rugby. I'm not quadriplegic, so unfortunately can't play that competitively, but seen it done. And yeah, I am biased to sled hockey being the most intense and I guess quote, violent sport, but quad rugby is definitely up there. It's a fun sport to watch. Wheelchair basketball, never really got the hang of it. It's very technical, trying to get the ball off the ground with the wheel and all that kind of thing. And then I've competed in the marathon and hand cycling here in Pittsburgh. So with sled hockey, you can see this picture at the bottom right. This is Josh Wirt on the right. He was actually a member of the 2002 Paralympic sled hockey team, and this is me on the left. I remember this day like it was yesterday. I was 8 years old here, and as soon as I saw his medal coming back from the Salt Lake City games in 2002, I told myself right at that moment, at 8 years old, this is what I want to do with this sport. And I didn't know what the Paralympics was, didn't know there was such a thing as a Paralympics. I just told my parents, my brother, and actually a local news crew that came into Pittsburgh and asked, back in early 2000s, and asked each player what they wanted out of the sport. I just said I wanted to win an Olympic medal, an Olympic gold medal. So didn't really care what the specific term for it was called. Although now today I take a lot of pride and joy in saying I'm a Paralympian, not an Olympian. Not that I'm not really a big stickler on titles and names and things, but I do have a lot of pride in being a Paralympian. So that distinction is pretty cool. Worked every day as hard as I could from age 8 to 20. My parents actually were able to put down like a cement slab in our backyard growing up. We called the sport court, where I would actually use a roller hockey sled that we converted from an ice hockey sled. So we took the blades, ice hockey blades off the bottom of it, put roller hockey blades in the bottom of it, and I used a metal or rubber crutch tips on the bottom of just converted sled hockey sticks. And I would skate around this cement slab, this 20 by 40 cement slab, up to 1,000 times. Not even an exaggeration. I would count in my head sometimes up to 1,000 going each way, right and left around this 20 by 40 slab. And I wouldn't go in for dinner sometimes until I had a certain number, whether it was 100, 500, or 1,000, or anything in between. I would always just be skating as hard as I could with that. And then I would take anywhere from 100 to 500 to, I don't know if I ever got to 1,000 shots. With one arm, that's quite a lot. But I would just be, again, just working as hard as I could on and off the ice whenever I could. And growing up, I only, like with our local team, I was only really able to get 1 or 2 ice times a week. And little side note, back in 2002, when I really declared this dream, my parents could see that myself and a number of other athletes, maybe like 2 or 3 others, who are now my best friends in the sport. I've known them since, I started playing 24 years ago. My parents and their parents could see that we were really into not only the participation of the sport, but the competition of it. So it's not just, hey, we're out here, having a good time. While it is a good time, and there's something special about getting on a fresh sheet of ice that's just been cut. You sometimes have the fog coming off of it. It's really cold, but your body's heating up because you have all the pads on and everything. And we are fully padded because it's a full contact sport. You go out on the ice for the first time and you just feel the sort of fresh air, I guess you call it. And it's just a really cool feeling. So, and I think everyone, every athlete has that kind of feeling when they get into their sport, but still to this day, it's a cool feeling. But to have the camaraderie we have and have our parents growing up see that, they were actually able to start the Mighty Penguins program off the back of the Erie Mighty Otters program, which was one of the first 2 or 3 teams in the country that formed back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So my mom was actually the first executive director of the program. So I guess you could say, I've had a lot of help, which I think anyone who gets to the Paralympics or any high degree of anything, doctors, I know you guys have had a lot of help, not just from, your coworkers and your fellow doctors, but your colleagues, but your friends and family too. So no one can achieve their dreams on their own. And I think I'm just another example of that. And again, as it says there, that is the ultimate key to achieving any dream at any high level. So achieving my dream. So obviously, as anything, it comes in stages. So 8 years old, I got the dream of being in the Paralympics. Took 6 years traveling all over the US and Canada with the local sled hockey Mighty Penguins team. And at 14 years old, I tried out for the USA development team, and I made it as the second youngest player of that year to make it. There was actually a 13-year-old who made it, and he was one of my best friends, at the time. Incredible player, really good player. He's actually an engineer now, so super smart kid as well. So got to make that team, and for the next 2 years, traveled again all over the US and Canada, but now wearing a USA jersey. Not this one pictured, but another USA jersey, and representing the country, as well as my family, the city of Pittsburgh, and our local sled hockey team. So again, 2 years. At 16 years old, tried out and was selected for the US national team. Now I remember this picture here was in 2014. 2010 was the year I made the national team, and actually it was the summer after the Paralympics in Vancouver. And I remember sitting in the stands. Our junior national team actually was able to go to watch the Paralympic team at the time, watch the team win the gold medal. And I remember sitting there with my parents and a lot of my teammates, and I looked at my parents, and I can remember, again, clear as day, telling my parents, that's going to be me next time. That's going to be me in the next Paralympics in 4 years. And my parents, if any of you guys have, a couple of people have met my parents here. If when you meet them, they're the type of parents that you can tell that they support their kids no matter what they do. While they may not like certain things that we do, I remember one time my mom saw a big hit with the national team before I was on the team. She saw a big hit and a guy got concussion from it. And she looked over at me and she said, "You're never playing for this team." Meanwhile, 4 or 5 years later, I'm on the team. But parents still supported us no matter what we wanted to do. And, my dad would always be coaching me on and off the ice with specific drills, shooting styles, skating styles, anything like that. My mom would be the one talking to different rinks in the area and organizing ice times and everything. So when I told them that's going to be me next year, you could tell that, they were all in as well. So, and then 16 years old, again, summer of 2010, made the team. At 20 years old, my dream came true. And you can see this picture on the left here. Again, this picture was actually the moment I got the medal, which I have here with me. I can show at the end here, but got the medal there. That picture is a little grainy because it was taken off of, I think my aunt or uncle's television screen while they were, back here in Pittsburgh. So that was sent to us actually, back when we were in Sochi. So the picture on the right is obviously the team picture there, and that was the culmination. You can kind of see me to the right of our physical therapist, kind of near the goal, one of the goalie's feet, right above it there. So, and Dr. Uline, we just called him Doc on the team, but he is actually here pictured as well next to one of our assistant coaches. One of the nicest guys I've ever met in the sport. Just overall positive guy. Like I've never met a doctor, let alone, a doctor in hockey, let alone a doctor in, I think he was in emergency medicine, being as positive as he is. And the stories he would tell us are just some of the craziest stories you'd ever hear, especially from emergency medicine. So, not only him, but everyone on the coaching staff and everyone on the team, we were just a really tight-knit group of guys. A lot of them I've grown up playing against and with over the years. And then some of them I had just met, when we made the team together. Just a really, really cool group of guys. And it was kind of a surreal moment after, 4 or 5 years old, I started playing the sport. Wasn't really into it a whole lot. I cried a couple times, I think, during practices and games. To 8 years old, really getting the dream, and then all the way up to 20 years old, achieving it. So just to come full circle there, I almost kind of went numb when it happened. And I was one of the only ones, if not the only one, when the camera crews, I think for NBC Sports, were coming around on the ice and showing our reactions and everything. Didn't even realize the cameras were there. I was just staring at the medal the whole time, just thinking, oh my gosh, it actually happened. And all I was thinking of was all the sacrifices my family and friends had made along the way, and how my dream eventually, in their words, they actually mentioned after the fact that my dream became their dream to see it come to fruition. Not only for everything they had to sacrifice, but how hard they saw me working on and off the ice, and seeing the fact that it was my entire life. And, fitness is, something that defines me. And I love that aspect. Not only to have fitness define me, but spina bifida, myelomeningocele define me. I love that aspect as well. And I don't know if you really hear that a lot from individuals who aren't in adaptive sports or something physically challenging, that they kind of have to push themselves past their own comfort zone to really achieve it. So how did I achieve this? A couple factors that drove me. I had tremendous support again from my parents, brothers, and teachers and trainers. I never looked at my disability as a negative. And to this day, I really credit this to my parents and my brother and my extended family. Never looked at my disability as a negative. There are days I genuinely forget I have a disability, as silly as that sounds, because I was born with it. I don't know any different. So I genuinely see it as a blessing. I don't see it as a burden, negative, anything like that. Well, I do have my challenges, and I've had, brain surgeries and back surgeries and things. And I even woke up during a surgery where my shunt was actually being pulled out of my neck and trying to be replaced and things. The doctor said, oh yeah, he has enough anesthesia. Told that to my parents. I did not have enough anesthesia. So that was a little interesting. Little scarring, obviously, for more than one reason. But through all of that, I've gotten to experience some amazing things. Got to travel all over the world, all over the US and Canada, like I said, Norway, South Korea, Russia, and just experience the world while playing, my favorite sport in the world. So again, never looked at it as a negative. I was never coddled. I remember multiple times distinctly being really tired, sleeping in my parents' house growing up, 3-story house. So at a basement with stairs and a third floor with stairs. I would fall asleep on the second main floor on the couch, and my mom would be yelling down. She's, a 5'2" Italian, 5'1" maybe, Italian, full-blooded Italian woman, yelling, "Hey Dan, you can't sleep on the couch. You need to come upstairs." And I genuinely remember as a young kid being terrified to walk up the stairs because my balance isn't great, right? But I realized, okay, I need to listen to my parents. Being, an Italian Catholic, got to listen to the parents there. So I remember thinking, all right, I got to figure this out one way or another, because no one's going to help me get up the steps because I have the ability to do it. My parents want me to learn the ability on my own to do it. Now to this day, I definitely don't ask for help sometimes when I should. And that's on me. But I had to learn how to go up the stairs while being really tired, or, my legs being sore, or my lower back being sore from not having vertebrae, or, my hips, or whatever it was, that some people kind of take for granted. And even I take for granted sometimes. I forget that I have a disability, like I said. And, just little things like that. I discovered my passion for not only competing in adaptive sports, but also just being physically fit, being able to go up and down stairs, being able to walk as long as I need to get to where I need to go with my friends and family. So, like I said, I love that fitness defined me and improved not only my physical well-being, but overall mental health and well-being too. So then came COVID. From March 2020 throughout most of 2021, all sled hockey had stopped, along with the entire world. Now, I don't mean to make this sound like, woe is me kind of thing, because I don't like pity or anything like that, or being, showing off my, negative aspects and mental health and try and get pity again. But, just a fact of life, it happened. Gyms were closed for a period of time, and when open, difficult for me to train wearing a mask at a high level. High intensity interval training, or, heavy lifting, it's kind of difficult with the mask. And I'm, again, not trying to complain about masks or anything. I just found that very difficult, and I wasn't really able to train the way I mentally knew I should be training, or I wanted to train. So that that caused me to take kind of a mental hit. So I lost the two things that kept me both physically and mentally fit my entire life. Didn't realize they were the things keeping me mentally fit. I knew they were keeping me physically fit, but I never thought of the mental aspect in that way before. I was able to recover, and still am, from the effects of the pandemic. Little side note, I gained about 30 pounds. And I'm a little over 75% of the way back down to, a current weight and, muscle tone and strength that I want to be at. But in this way, I have a newfound understanding for how important adaptive sports, and really adaptive fitness and just fitness in general, are for individuals with disabilities like myself. Because things can happen at any moment with disabilities, whether you're extremely healthy or not. And I've always found that being as healthy as I possibly can be, when things like COVID, or, a brain surgery, or a shunt failure, or just, things happening with your feet, or, your back, something happening like that, when you're at your peak, or the best physical condition and mental condition you can be in that moment, the recovery and the ability to get through it is a lot easier. So my final thoughts, what I hope you take away from my experience, it's important to offer individuals with disabilities at a young age the opportunity to experience a variety of adaptive sports. Even though I stuck with sled hockey, being able to experience a ton of adaptive sports over the years, especially in my formative years growing up, was extremely formational and monumental for me as an individual and as an athlete. Showing individuals with disabilities and their parents and guardians the importance of making fitness part of the daily routine rather than a chore. I know a lot of times it's looked at as, fitness is, very challenging and painful and all these kind of things. And it is, it should be. Nothing happens without effort, without difficulties. You have to go through good times and bad times. You have to experience the bad times so you can appreciate the good times. Not to get super zen about it or whatever, but it's extremely true. And when you put a kid in a sled, or have a kid try an adaptive sport, if their parents or guardians are there, you see their demeanors change right away, because you see the kid, especially when they're really young, a lot of times they're really happy, and the kid, you can see in their face, they forget they have the disability. They're just flying around on the ice or in the chairs or whatever. And they're just having a good time and just, competing the way they want to compete. So you have to let them challenge themselves physically and mentally to break barriers and build confidence. This break barriers and build confidence is actually my tagline for my personal training business. Because I think it's a kind of a foundational tagline. When you break a barrier, you build confidence no matter what. Because a barrier obviously is something that's challenging, that you aren't sure if you can complete, but you have some confidence that you can complete it. But when you really do complete it to the best of your ability, you build that much more confidence. I work with a lot of people in adaptive technologies, and the sports that I played, the adaptive technologies are extremely important, and they've changed and improved over the years and made the sports better in their own right. But it is very important, I think, to make sure the technologies and equipment don't override an individual's use of their abilities. So if you have like a sled with like gears and chains and like a motor on it or something, not that I've ever seen that, but if there's any chains or gears or anything on it that are taking the place of the individual's God-given ability, I think that is kind of a detriment to the sport. And also growing up, I know I played a lot of able-bodied sports, and just seeing when I was trying to compete and I thought I was competing to my top ability, I was still slowing down my able-bodied counterparts. So, and as an athlete, an individual who wants to compete, not just participate, that didn't sit right with me. So I didn't really want to be the one that everyone was kind of looking at, slowing down their game and just staring at the whole time, to just say, hey, I'm participating in this. I wanted to be able to compete and really challenge myself and challenge other people in the best way I could. So thank you. Thank you all again for being here and allowing me to speak on the topic.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your comments, both of you. And Ryan, if you want to come on back on, we have a few minutes left for some Q&A and discussion, and maybe as people are thinking of their questions, I'll start with one, and that is, Dan, your work ethic is amazing. So your parents must have been very supportive while they were waiting on dinner while you did 1,000 laps in front of the yard. It's incredible. It's so important for kids and young adults to have a role model. I know my son was particularly starstruck when he had the opportunity to meet you at one of our Mighty Pens events. And I wonder, in thinking about that, what bit of advice or would you offer to parents who are raising a child with a disability? Parents innately want to help. So what advice would you give about how to help, but still instill the confidence and independence that you talked about that was so important in your path?
I would say the biggest thing, I mean, it's kind of very simple and then kind of breaks down into smaller goals, but the biggest thing is don't coddle the child. My parents, when they found out I was going to have spina bifida, mind blown, world shattered, everything, right? Everything they had heard from doctors was, oh, your child isn't going to be able to walk, talk, think on their own, be able to function in society on their own. Not only that, but it's going to affect your older son, who is 3-4 years older than me. They were told it's going to affect him in extremely negative ways. Meanwhile, he's now a PM&R doctor and saving lives in his own right. But there was this one doctor that said, yeah, all of that could happen, but it could also not happen. And he showed them a video of individuals with spina bifida playing and having a good time and pushing themselves in their chairs and walking and waddling, whatever you want to call it. But the doctor's main goal there was to say, treat them like anyone else. They're going to have abilities. They're going to have disabilities, things they can't do. Don't try to make them do the things that they really physically cannot do. Like, I'm never going to run Usain Bolt sprints, right? But whatever abilities I have, do that, like use those, push those, and challenge the child with those, and don't treat them like they're fragile or incapable of something. Just figure out the way that they can do a certain thing. Don't say they can't do it if they do have the ability to do it, just in a different way.
It's fantastic advice. Yeah, thanks for that. So Ryan, you talked about the Disabled Hockey Festival, which was a huge event here in Pittsburgh that we were really fortunate to host. And I should mention too that the three of us and others have partnered in outreach and fundraisers for the Mighty Penguins in the past, and that's been a fantastic event as well. Ryan, can you talk about what kind of preparation was behind getting the medical team ready for such a huge event like the Disabled Hockey Tournament?
Yeah, so it was kind of I feel like a lot of these major events, you're doing a lot of work in a short amount of time. And so really a lot of the residents and the leadership with UPMC Sports Med and our department stepped up, and we were able to coordinate things pretty effectively. But I wanted to give a quick shout out to a few residents. There's something called like an emergency action plan, which needs to be in for each facility that we work at. And we had I think 5 different facilities we were playing at, and we had residents create these plans. So George Rahm, Mike Glicksman, Phil Stevens, I think they're all in PG1 first year of residency, and they were doing this outside of work and putting this together and meeting outside. And I don't think it would have happened without efforts like that. And so really we had to call all the EMS around the arenas and make sure they knew this event was going on, and let them know, hey, these athletes may have different diagnoses than maybe you're familiar with seeing. And just to, be prepared for this type of thing. And credit to our department. I think we all created these makeshift medical bags that we used at each arena. And I think we basically had to create a system to where we could all communicate effectively and document these injuries and make sure it was a safe event. And I think we did that really well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So maybe I could follow that up with a question for both of you, and that is, what advice do you have for others who are trying to get something up and running in their own communities? We're pretty fortunate here that there's a lot of interest, a lot of support, a lot of resources to do these sorts of things. But what advice would you give for others that want to do this in maybe another state that don't have that infrastructure already in place? And what have you both learned regarding advocacy on how we can do that?
I think just from my perspective, obviously, I was very young when our sled hockey team started, and fortunately, and I had the blessing of my parents being a couple of the people that started the program. So there's my I guess personal advantage there, but everyone has people in their corner, right, that want to do something to help others, right, especially if you're in this kind of line of work. So I guess just find a need in the community. And I guess in this case, adaptive sports, find an adaptive sport or a level of adaptive fitness that individuals with disabilities are interested in, right? That they may not be able to do at an able-bodied level, but see if there's something nationally that, they could use as a template, right, in their area. And it might not be, contacting a huge organization or a huge company to help out with it. At the beginning, my parents were using their own credit card to fund travel for the teams and ice times and things. And then eventually the Penguins kind of picked up on it, and they helped out with some travel here and there. And they allow us to use their, the Penguins elite jerseys and things like that. But it really is a grassroots effort right at the beginning. And all it takes is just a group of individuals that have a common goal and want to see individuals with disabilities not only participate, but compete and have a good time and learn what their bodies can do, like I said. So everything happens with a group of like-minded individuals, for sure.
Yeah. My experience has been similar, or what I've learned about is similar what Dan's discussed. I think you're going to need a family like the Mccoys, a group of people who are extremely motivated, that want to contribute to this longitudinally, or people like that who are very invested. And I think, Dan, I had no idea that your family had started the Mighty Penguins.
Yeah, we started off of the Erie Mighty Otters, but my mom was the first executive director. My dad was one of the first coaches of what is now the Mighty Penguins. So we started, practicing in Pittsburgh with the Erie Mighty Otters, and we would go up to Erie like a couple times a month to practice. But when we spun off, it was my parents and 2 other families that really started the program.
Yeah, and my sense of this is that, of course, now Mighty Penguins is this outstanding organization that's very robust, multiple teams, but this took time. And I think that's kind of what I've noticed with these organizations that have a substantial amount of participants. It builds up over a decade, if not more. So I think don't try to become the Mighty Penguins in 6 months. Maybe it will take a decade, or it'll take some time.
It's taken 24 years for us to become the Mighty Penguins. So
24 years, yeah, okay. So
yeah, exactly. So, and honestly, in a way, I kind of wish I was in a program. Again, I'm extremely blessed and fortunate to be in the program, and just like for you to highlight Alex Brown, the kid's an unreal athlete, just unbelievable. And he's a perfect example of someone who doesn't want to just compete, or just doesn't want to just participate. He wants to compete. He wants to compete at the highest level he possibly can. And that comes from his parents too. Like when you talk to them, you know that they're competitors. So in a way, I kind of wish I was starting at a grassroots sports team or gym. Like I do have a dream of starting a gym at some point. In a way, I wish we were at that point, because there's something cool about starting a grassroots movement, not having a lot of options or a lot of tools at your disposal and just figuring it out.
Mhm.
So I think that was really cool. Again, kind of biased, but pretty cool how my parents and other family members and other parents did that throughout the organization. So
Yeah, it's great. I mean, making use of those local advocates and stakeholders, and then building upon that. I think there's still a lot, even though we have a lot of great opportunities here, there's still a ton of work that can be done. So yeah, we should definitely leverage some of your enthusiasm on starting some things from the ground up. I'll mention, since we probably have a group that is interested in this, I found out today actually that Mayor Gainey is hosting a town hall on October 25th to create a more disability-friendly city. So anyone that's involved in the call today, or pass that along to some friends, to get that word out. There may be some opportunities to get some ideas in front of Mayor Gainey to make some differences in our local community. Dan, I wonder if we could go back to the comment you made about COVID and the impact there. I mean, COVID has changed our lives in so very many ways. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this Zoom had it not been for COVID, right? We found ways to reach out to each other and continue to connect. But what helped you, or what prompted you to get back into your fitness routine and adaptive sports following COVID? What was important about it to you, and how did you do that? Because I think a lot of people are finding that difficult right now, is how to get back to some of the things that they enjoyed before the world kind of changed a couple of years ago.
absolutely, yeah. So I kind of just taking a step back. Growing up, I always, like I mentioned, had the physical aspect nailed down from a young age, from 4 years old. I never really thought deeply about the mental aspect of sports. I always had moments during games or after games where I didn't play as well as I should have. And I always thought okay, in this play, how can I do better? Or in this shot, how can I hit the net better? Or, instead of hitting the crossbar, how can I make the puck go an inch lower so it goes in the net? Things like that. But I never really thought of the mental aspect in terms of the mentality of keeping your body as physically fit as possible. Not only with lifting weights, or the way I call it, picking things up and putting them down, but also just what you're putting in your body, just the nutrition aspect. And I'll be the first to tell everyone, I am not a dietitian. Sheets, I love Sheets. It's wonderful. I actually went to Sheets today and got a grilled chicken wrap. It was wonderful. So again, not a dietitian, but that quickly caught up to me in COVID, in the 2 years that we've had here. And it wasn't until February of this year that I really it hit me mentally. And I thought, okay, I'm not living a life that I'm preaching. I'm not practicing what I'm preaching. I'm not living a life that I know I would be proud of, that my parents built for me and that they would be proud of. And it's affecting me not only mentally, but physically too. Like I said, I gained 30 pounds, and being 5'4", not having all the legs or all the muscles in my legs, 100 or 185 pounds was my heaviest. And 150 something or other is kind of where I feel comfortable for my body weight and my athletic abilities and all that. Now, obviously, that number is kind of arbitrary, and it's different for everyone. But I realized, again, I wasn't living to my best ability. And I wasn't practicing what I was preaching. And to be a personal trainer and a Paralympian, I don't just want to be looked at as a has-been kind of thing, because you see a lot of athletes, just monsters, extremely physically active, muscular, all this kind of stuff in their time. But then as time goes on, life happens, which life happens to everyone. But I wanted to be one of those people, and I still want to be one of those people that's looked at as an adaptive athlete, someone who loves their disability, loves what it gives them, and a gold medalist, and someone who is able to live that outside of their sport. So that's kind of the main goal, and just living for other people. I don't think our lives are about us. I think our lives are about other people. So if we're not helping other people, then what are we really doing?
Yeah.
I know everyone on this call is kind of that same mind. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great perspective. Yeah. Thanks for putting it that way. So I know we only have just a couple of minutes left. Maybe I could just end, Ryan, by asking you about, you mentioned the high school website research study, and we've heard about the importance of getting kids active, engaged, and at a level that they can compete and feel that confidence in that at an early age. What were the limitations with what you could find, and how can we access more data and work to get the word out more?
Yeah, so I think, for instance, like if you look at like a unified sport organization, which is under the Special Olympics, that is a very robust organization that has basically provided the resources probably to all 50 states substantially. And to be honest, I think a lot of these state high school websites they're not updated, right? And so there's probably going to be a lag there. So I think it's a great question. It's what is the go-to resource for these parents? And I think the one website that comes to mind, and Dan, maybe you have other websites that you think of, something like a Move United lists in every single state the opportunities for adaptive sport there, or like on a Special Olympic, which I know there's slightly different approaches with that, but with those organizations. But some of these, like a Move United, I think is really good. Team USA, USA.com. Team USA.com has a list of all 50 states and some opportunities that are listed there for participation. So I think it's really, it's a real challenge, but I think it's probably just like word of mouth, to be honest, Dan. Like how would you disseminate that, Dan, if you had a athlete that was training with you?
I'm a big, it sounds funny to say, but I'm a big word of mouth guy.
Yeah.
Just growing up, that's how we got information. A neighbor told us about sled hockey, told my parents about sled hockey. It wasn't, we went on the internet and went on Instagram, right, and found it. Now that's an option, obviously, today, but everything starts from word of mouth. So it's kind of on the individuals that want to know about it, that want to see if it's available for them to look it up, to go kind of research it. Because again, nothing's going to be handed to you. My parents are perfect examples of that. They had to start what is now the Mighty Penguins, along with other families, but they started it themselves. They didn't really have a blueprint or anything of what to do, when to do it, how to do it. Everything, they figured it out as they went. And there were mistakes, and there are still mistakes today, but there's a lot more good that has come out of it than negatives. So I think biggest thing is just start with word of mouth. Obviously, we have the internet now, and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all that, so you can look those things up. But yeah, Move United is a great resource. Challenge Athletes Foundation, it's another great one. I know the Adaptive Training Foundation in Texas, I believe. They're another adaptive gym that they're kind of leading the way in terms of like high level adaptive sports and fitness. Then you have Ability 360 out in Arizona, I believe, and Lakeshore in Alabama. So those are kind of the big three that I know of. And then Spalding, I think, up in New England area maybe. But yeah, just kind of looking at places like that, seeing how they're doing it, maybe reaching out to them, seeing if they would have any advice or anything. But I would say don't try to do something that another organization is doing the exact way they're doing it. Because nobody likes a copycat. Do it in a way that will benefit the folks you're trying to serve in the best way possible.
Yeah, that's great. And definitely the sense of community is such an important piece of all of this. And so hopefully that's in part what we help to start to nurture tonight by sharing your thoughts. These are great presentations. Really appreciate all of your thoughts and perspectives on this and sharing this with our community as we create even more sense of community. So thank you both. Thanks for everyone who joined. I'll turn things back over to Andy to close us out tonight.
Dr. Soa, Ryan, and Dan, thank you so much for an informative discussion. For anyone who had a question we were unable to get to today, or if you would like to learn about ways to support the initiatives of the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, please reach out to me at raz37@pitt.edu. Thanks again to our presenters and to Dr. Soa. And to everyone who joined us, please be on the lookout for future sessions of Rehab Reels and have a good evening.